We are recording the forum, so please be sure to speak into your microphones. The forum will be available for viewing on the district's website later this week. Before we begin, I'll describe the general format for the forum. Candidates will begin with 1.5-minute opening statements, introducing themselves and articulating why they are running for the school board. That will be followed by a response to a question they all received in advance. We will then pose 2 general topic questions for all of the candidates to answer. Next will be the lightning round, where each candidate will receive 1 randomly drawn question submitted ahead of time by our PLC members. And then we will pose 1 last question for all the candidates to answer. As time permits, providing everybody follows the timekeeping, which of course they will, we shall have time for extra questions submitted by the audience. And I know a lot of people have already submitted questions. There were index cards when you came in, and there are extra index cards. Melissa and Stephanie, do you want to wave? These are the people to give your index cards to. And they will collect them. There won't be time for all of the questions, unfortunately, but they'll look for recurring themes, and they'll also try to avoid duplication with questions that have already been asked. And the questions can be submitted anytime during the forum. Please direct your question. I know a lot of you have already turned them in, but please make sure the question is directed to all of the candidates and not one particular candidate. Throughout the forum, we will rotate the order in which the candidates respond to questions, and I will call on the candidates to answer. To get through the prepared questions and allow time for audience questions, we will limit response time. Time allotments will be announced before each round of questioning. PLC Chair-elect Elizabeth Pillay is our timekeeper today, and she will signal you with green or yellow cards to indicate how much response time remains. When the time expires, you will hear a buzzer or beep, and Elizabeth will hold up the red card. Given the number of candidates, I do ask that you please abide by the time constraints to allow everyone equal time. And finally, for everyone in attendance, please keep in mind that this is not a debate, but rather an opportunity for all candidates to share their views with the voting public. To that end, we ask that everyone in the audience please be respectful of the ground rules of the forum. Any outbursts, including clapping, shouting, or heckling, will not be tolerated. Individuals responsible for such interruptions will be asked to leave. We thank everyone for their cooperation and look forward to a civil and informative session. So we will begin with the opening statement from each candidate. Each of you will be given 90 seconds to respond. And the question is, please tell us a bit about yourself and why you are running for school board. And we will begin with Ellen Jones.
Okay, but it doesn't sound like mine's on. It's on? Okay. Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Jones. I'm running for school board because I am passionate about our public schools, and I care deeply about the legacy that we have built here in Edina of excellence in education. I feel that our schools are the pathway to opportunity for all students, and I feel that they are the heart of our community. I'm running because my 3 children, Ted, Margot, and Charlotte McElveen, all went to these schools and had an excellent education. And I want to make sure that we maintain that education and not only are complacent about how good it is, but move it forward. So that's why I'm running. And I'll tell you a little bit about me. I grew up in public schools, and I went to Northwestern, got an economics degree, went on and worked in operations for a financial corporation. And then I moved here and spent the rest of my time serving the community. I know what public service is like. I'm prepared to work hard for this community because I want our schools to maintain their excellence. Thank you.
Okay, Matt Laux.
My name is Matt Laux. My wife, Marie, and I moved to Edina in 2004, and we currently have 3 kids in the schools, a first grader, a 4th grader, and a sixth grader. I've volunteered in Edina basketball, baseball, and soccer, and we have hosted a variety of fundraisers and interns at our house. So while I think humility is a great skill for the board, what I've learned is that at the campaign, you have to set that on the back burner. So if you will allow me the next minute to put that on the back burner. I graduated from the University of Chicago in 3 years with a degree in economics while also playing on and being captain of the men's basketball team. I think this is a testament to my work ethic and my ability to prioritize what is important. Later, I earned an MBA also from the U of C and passed 3 levels of annual exams to get my CFA in 2001, again a testament to my work ethic. I worked for 12 years in the investment business managing portfolio's in the healthcare area, and then I joined a school board 10 years ago to get more involved in education. I then made a career change in 2012, taught in a classroom during the day while earning a K-12 ESL degree by taking classes at night and in the summer. Only 15 left. In terms of why I'm running, I think my motivation and dedication to education is clear. The bedrock of America, and based on my actions, I honestly don't know what more I could have done to show my commitment to this cause and my readiness for this role. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder that Elizabeth is holding up the time warners here. Owen Michelson.
Hi, I'm Owen Michelson.
Wait, I can't get it to stop.
Hold, please.
Sorry.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Owen Michelson. My wife and I have 4 children. We've lived in Edina since 1999. And we've had a student in the Edina school system since 1999. That's 18 consecutive years, with 6 months ago. We are deeply invested in the community, deeply invested in the Edina schools, and deeply grateful for what the Edina schools have done for our children. And especially grateful for the caring and hardworking and competent teachers of Edina. I think it's time for me to give back. And I want to give back in the form of putting education first as the preeminent goal of Edina schools, so that we equip our students with the skills and knowledge and critical thinking they'll have to be successful in college, work, and citizenship. We want to teach our students how to think, not what to think. I think this is especially important in the face of declining test scores in the high school in math and English in the last 5 years. Now, I want to apply a fresh set of eyes and a fresh approach to these challenges and others that the Edina schools have. The first thing I'd like to do is expand voice and choice for the parents. I'd like to expand the curriculum options, and I'd like to increase transparency, left to right, top to bottom, in the Edina schools, so that we return to a laser focus on education first, so all of our students learn and succeed.
Lisa O'Brien.
Is that good? Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa O'Brien. My husband Jerry and I moved to the district 21 years ago, first in the countryside neighborhood and now in the Concord neighborhood. We have 3 children, a daughter as a 12th grader, a son as a 9th grader, both at the high school, and we have a 5th grader at Concord. Like many of you, I have been an active volunteer in the schools, from room parent to chaperone to Bravo presenter, art adventure presenter, media center specialist, center or volunteer, and career and counseling center at the high school. I was also parent representative for the Gifted Advisory Council, and of course for the last 4 years I've served on the Edina School Board. I'm running for re-election because I love Edina. I love Edina Public Schools. I'm a product of public schools my entire life. I am passionate about kids. I am passionate about education. When I ran 4 years ago, I promised that I would help the administration prioritize its efforts. I promised that I would press the administration to provide data to inform its decisions. I promised that I would listen and understand how those decisions impact you and your family. And I promised that I would ask the questions at board meetings that you were thinking. I kept those promises. There has been a lot of change in our district: new superintendent, new high school principal, new configurations, new spaces. I'm asking for your vote so that I can help this administration get off the launch pad straight and put our child's education at the foremost priority. Thank you.
Chris Tischer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Tischer. Excuse me. So I've been a part of the Edina community for a little over 2 years now, but a part of the Edina educational community for a little over 6 years. My daughter has been open enrolled in Countryside initially prior to us moving here, so we've had the opportunity to have her entire education be a part of the Edina community. And it's been something that we have been super happy about. Our son has also been part of the Edina educational community just starting this year as he started kindergarten. So why I'm running is primarily to ensure that my children, as well as all of the other children within the Edina Public School District, have the same equal opportunities. Ensuring that resources are being distributed appropriately to meet the individual needs of all of our students, as opposed to just saying, you know, everybody gets the same thing. Let's make sure that we're taking a look and find out what do our individual students need in order to be successful and make sure that we're getting those resources allocated appropriately. And that's why I'm running as a member of the Edina School Board. Thank you.
Gabe Adderhold.
Well, good morning, everyone. I first want to thank the Parent Leadership Council for hosting this forum and the voters for coming out. My name is Gabe Adderholt, and I have lived here in Edina for over 22 years. I graduated from Edina High School in 2012 and the University of Minnesota this year with a degree in political science. And I'm running for the Edina School Board to bring a recent student's perspective to our board. As someone that's recently been in public education, I understand the successes we've had here in Edina. Rigorous academic coursework, amazing extracurricular activities. But I know the struggles, growing class sizes, teachers that continue to feel more burdened with more demands that we put on them, concerns about the rollout with personalized learning and other initiatives. I believe that on January 1st, we need 4 school board members that are ready day one. Over the past 10 months, I've knocked on hundreds of doors. I've attended majority of school board meetings and work sessions, and I'm ready to get to work for you, whether it be school start and end time, to personalized learning concerns, to having a laser focus on how we can get back to optimal class sizes. I am very honored to be part of this incredibly amazing slate of candidates, and I'd be honored to earn your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Erica Allenberg.
Hello, my name is Erica Allenberg, and I'm obviously running for school board. I come by my passion for education, honestly. I'm the daughter of 2 educators. I'm the daughter of 2 educators. My dad was a professor of education for 35 years at the University of Florida, and my mother was a first grade school teacher, and she also was a professor of reading at the University of South Florida. I have, my husband and I have been residents of Edina for 15 years, and we have 3 students, one that just graduated from the high school, a son that's in 7th grade, and a daughter that is in 4th grade. I'm a doer. I'm not a talker. I've spent my entire life giving back to the community because that was a value that was instilled with me by my parents. I was the Creek Valley PTO president in 2014, and I was a member of the PLC with a lot of you guys. I'm a Girl Scout troop leader. I'm an Edina, a Better Chance host parent, and I'm proud to be a host parent of a junior at the high school right now. I recently won the Edina Community Foundation's Connecting with Kids Leadership Award for my volunteerism on behalf of children in our community that have learning differences. I've coached girls softball, flag football, and soccer. I was a hockey manager. I served on the board for the Edina Football Association. I love our Edina community. It's the longest I've lived anywhere in my entire life, and I'm proud to call it my home. I'm running for school board because I love this district and the children of the community, and I'd like to utilize the combination.
Good. Chad Bell.
You finished strong, though. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Chad Bell, as my nameplate says. Thanks for coming this morning. We really appreciate the. Oh, we're not started yet?
Sorry.
I forget what I just said.
Technical difficulties. We're good.
You ready?
Yes.
You guys got the first part? All right, I won't go back. Okay, so a little bit about me. This is my second tour of duty in Edina. I moved here and I lived here out of college for about 6 years, and I was figuring out what I was going to do with my life. Ended up getting married in 2004. My wife and I moved here in 2005. We've got 2 kids in this district. My daughter Olivia's in 7th grade at Southview, and my son Jackson's at Concord in 2nd grade. We've had a wonderful experience in the school system. My kids have varying abilities. One is does very well, and one needs a lot of assistance. And we've been served very well by not only the teachers but the aides and things like that. We're very proud that our kids go to school here. A little bit more about me. I've sort of become that dad to most of these kids. I've been coaching for 6 years, whether it's girls softball, soccer, football, all the stuff that Eric was talking about. You just kind of get involved and do those things. I'm a Cub Master like Owen is, and I also coach Special Olympics. I've been doing that for about 20 years, and actually had some kids who were in Edina High School when I started when I was young, and I've seen them come through and grow up. So I've been involved with the community a long time, and I love living here. So I'm running because I think service is important, and I think that with my background, whether it be working in a corporate environment, managing large teams, managing strategic initiatives, large budgets, I can bring that type of look to the table in terms of analytics, but also just the communication piece as well, to make sure that we're interacting with everyone on a meaningful level, and that we're all counted. Everyone feels like they're being listened to. So thanks for the time, and I look forward to the next question.
Faisal Deri.
Thank you so much. My name is Faisal Deri, and I'm really appreciate the energy and engagement, and I appreciate the Parent Leadership Council for organizing this. This is one of the bedrock of our Democrats for making sure that we're all engaged and we know what's going on in our schools. So I have graduated a years back in an associate in accounting, and I learned in IT, and then I earned my bachelor's degree in business. So I spend most of my time in the public accounting, where I've done audits and risk management and compliance. And also my passion for running for a school board comes from that my wife and I are the parents of 5 kids. And we've lived here, this is our 2nd year in Edina public schools. But we have lived a place that is only a walking distance from here, parts of Hopkins Public Schools, for 16 years. My oldest son graduated from Hopkins High School. So public school and public education has always been one of the most critical things for our family, a family that cannot afford to send their kids for private schools. The most important thing that this community has done for me to give me the excellent education that we have. So we have been fortunate enough to live in Edina. And every single morning when I wake up, I feel that my kids and I feel blessed because of the public education we have in Edina. I want to make sure that I can contribute my skills and my passion and my commitment for this type of excellent education to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Matthew Fox.
Hi, everyone, and thank you to the PLC for hosting the event. I'm Matthew Fox, and so I thought I'd take a bit of a different twist on who I am, and I'd tell a story. So a friend of mine 2 years ago named Tommy Miracle asked, "Who are you?" And the first answer that I had for him was a father. So I wanted to tell a story from a year ago. My son Gael came home from school. He was 4 years old at the time. That's not him. He came home from school a year ago, and he was 4 years old, and he was upset. He's a pretty happy kid in general, so that was concerning to me. So what I did was I stopped my phone call that I was on at the time. I came over and I sat down next to Gael, and I said, "Hey, buddy, what's wrong?" And he said to me, "Somebody called me a dwarf today at school." And I said, "What's a dwarf?" And I couldn't figure it out. He was upset. He was crying. And then I realized he said dwarf. So my reaction was to say, "Buddy, you're not a dwarf." And he said, "How do you know, Dad?" And I said, "Because I made you. I made you compassionate. I made you a good person. And I made you smart. But I didn't make you very tall." So the point that I'm making with that story is for all of us. Everyone here has great skills and backgrounds and experiences. But when we think about how we want to react to what's going on in our community, right now is a pretty divisive time. I see the magazine in the back of the room. I see people's eyes. And when my child had an issue, I thought about what does he need in that moment. As a board member, the next question will answer what skills and backgrounds do we have that'll be helpful, and I'll bring those forward in the next answer, but I'll think about what do all of your kids need. Because if all of us as one team in one community decide with every single question, ask ourselves what do our kids need, we'll get there together, because first and foremost, I'm a father. Thank you.
David Goldstein.
Ready? Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the PLC for sponsoring this. My name is David Goldstein. I'm running for re-election to the board. In terms of my relevant qualifications, the most relevant is that I've just served for 4 years on the board, and hopefully many of you have an idea about how I go about doing that. And that's what I'll mostly talk about. But I will also mention that I've lived in Edina for over 25 years. I have 3 children, all of whom have graduated from Edina High School, the youngest this past May. The board is mostly about governance, and it's about process, and it's about making sure that the community has a say in their children's education, and it's about making sure that our teachers and our administrators who have training and education get to do their jobs. The less the board meddles, the better. And so we need to be very careful about what we're promising to do as board members. We are about governance. We are about hiring the superintendent and supervising the superintendent. Those are our primary jobs. That said, there's also a reason why you elect a board, and that is to make sure that the community does have a voice and that debate and discussion does happen in an appropriate way in the community. I do want to be part of that voice. I want to make sure discussions are rational, and I will continue to do that if reelected. Thank you.
Heidi Hilliker.
Wait, stop.
Sorry.
Okay.
Is this on? There we go. Hi, my name's Heidi Hilliker, and the reason that I'm running and who I am, a little bit about me, is that I've been in the community for over 21 years. I went to high school at Edina, I went to elementary school at Cornelia, and I also went to Southview. I have two children. I have a son at Cornelia and one at the high school. I think that this community has been amazing. It's done a great job for my students, for me, as well as my kids. I've been involved in the PTO. I ran their readathon and brought that to the community at Cornelia. I think the reason that I'm running is I want to ensure that all of our voices are heard. I think we have a great diverse group of people up here on our board currently and as running, but we don't represent all of our community. Cornelia has been a big part of my life, and I feel like there's been not a big enough voice for that part of our community. And I want to help ensure that we represent all of our community within this. And I am so excited to see all of you out here listening to all of us talk and asking us questions. I've never seen such engagement. To have to park 4 to 5 blocks away, this is the coolest thing ever. I mean, about an hour ago, I was reading blogs from all the moms and the moms page and the different voices, and I really, really am amazed at how you guys are speaking out. And just to be able to hear that and listen to you and be able to be that voice on the board would be amazing, because that's what I would do, is listen to your voices and what you want and weigh that in with the governance that we've all talked about here.
Mhm.
Me? Thank you.
Thank you all. Oh, so if you're sitting behind the candidates, there is space on the floor in front of us. You'll have a much better view. So please come up here.
And we now have audio with a 30-second delay.
We can sit on the floor.
Carolyn, how are you? Please, that's kind of creeping me out. I wanted to say,
There's video too?
There's video, but it'll be delayed. There is audio next to it.
Okay.
We can't have you sitting behind the camera.
Sure. Right.
Well, I got my first.
Okay, we can't have anybody behind the candidates. In the adjacent room, there is video and audio with a 30-second delay. Yep. There is video and audio in the adjacent room 350. It's got a 30-second delay, but it's all right. Now let's move to the prepared question, which you received last week. You will each, again, have 90 seconds to respond. With 12 candidates vying for 4 seats, how are you differentiating yourself in this election? What unique abilities, experiences, passions, and vision distinguishes you from your fellow candidates? And we will begin with Matt Laux.
Okay, great, thanks. So I think I am different from the 12 candidates, and if you've seen my yard signs, I do have the classroom experience. Sorry, is this better? Okay, sorry about that. Eat this thing. So I am different in the following ways. I bring to the table classroom experience, which no candidate on the board on this slate does. Other than the 2 incumbents, I'm the only one with school board experience, and I have the business experience. Now, while I bring that up, here's the most important thing: I am not an expert in any of those areas. While I think my performance in the investment world was great, I'm not Warren Buffett. While I have served on a school board before and they had their challenges, it is not as complex as Edina. And while I do the best that I can for my students, most of the folks that I teach with do a better job than I do, okay? And as long as we're here, I think it's fair to extend those comments to all the staff that I have had the honor of meeting, who have taught my students and the other children in our community. And based on the conversations I've had with parents, I think those comments go to the entire staff across all of our schools. The reason I bring this up is because it highlights that I do have a sense of humility that I think is important for the board. My dedication to this came before I was running for the board, and I come here not to ask for your vote, but because of the work I put in, I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thanks. Owen Michelson.
In January, I spent my lunch hours in a conference room at work calling friends and family, going, what's going on with our schools? There's open social and political advocacy taking place in the classrooms and in the curriculum. Schools have no place doing that. At the very least, it distracts us from our educational mission, and at the very worst, it's unfair. That's not what schools are for. Society has three pillars upon which it educates its youth: the parents, the community, and the teachers. It is the parents' duty, right, and prerogative to teach their children social and political values, not the schools. The school's job, when it comes up with social and political values, is to teach the full spectrum of those values, not just one or a couple. When you elect me to the school board, I'm going to be a school board member upholding district policy prohibiting social or political advocacy in the classroom or curriculum. I'm going to be the member pushing for more voice and choice with parents. And I'm going to be the member pushing for a more balanced curriculum, because we need to teach our students how to think, and not what to think. We need to get our eye back on the ball of teaching for educational excellence for all students.
Ms. O'Brien.
My qualifications are listed on the brochure in the back for all of you here. During my first term on the board, I served on many committees. Teaching and learning, which I've been chair for about a year and a half. Policy, special education, early childhood special education, mental health and wellness, world's best workforce, gifted advisory council, parent leadership council, community education, and liaison for Valley View Middle School. My educational and professional experience allows me to bring a unique lens to the board. Before I joined the board, I earned a PhD in child development, child clinical psychology from the University of Minnesota. So I'm able to look at decisions and whether they are developmentally appropriate for our children. As a graduate student, I taught undergraduates, and so I can empathize what it's like to be in the classroom and do a lesson plan and reach the varied needs of our students. I have 8 years experience doing research with at-risk youth. I have 4 years experience in pediatric psychology, so I've worked with children evaluating and identifying their strengths and challenges. I've attended special education meetings and worked with parents and teachers to come together to best meet the students' needs. I have also served 9 years at Greater Minneapolis Crisis Nursery, working with the most vulnerable in our community. This is what differentiates me from others on this panel. I bring this breadth and depth to every decision I make on the board. Thank you.
Chris Tischer.
Thank you. So with a total of 12 candidates up here, I think it's very difficult to say that any experience that I have is not going to be replicated by one or more of the individuals up here. At the same time, you know, with an educational background in political science, a professional background in project management and technology, I feel those two allow me to work with other individuals to work on building a consensus on decisions that are being made. As a project manager, it's something that, you know, you have to work with all of the different parties, all of the different stakeholders to ensure that all of their needs are being met. And as a member of the school board, that's what I would hope to do. As the community, you are the stakeholders, and making sure that your voices are being heard, and that we're making sure that those voices are being part of the decisions that are being made. You know, the things that I would like to focus on as part of the school board, you know, my background in project management has been in technology. And I'd like to see a focus, or that continued focus, within the district for the STEM curriculum, and doing what we can to ensure that the resources are there for our teachers and for our students to continue that. The other item that I'd like to ensure that we're continuing on is equity, making sure that each of our students individually are getting the resources that they need to be successful. Thank you.
Gabe Adderhold.
I've identified 3 unique qualifications with my candidacy for the board. The first one being is I'm the only candidate that's a recent student from Edina High School and our public school system. And when I've attended various school board meetings or workshops, sometimes there's discussion about community engagement and brought up that we don't have student perspective or voice in the process. And when we talk about policies that impact our students, I don't think there's a full way that we can create those policy outcomes we desire without a student perspective. The second area is I have a unique government and political experience. In 2014, I interned in the Minnesota State Legislature for our state senator. And in that process and in my own political experience, I've learned the legislative process very well. The players at the Capitol, how do you draft legislation? How do you advocate the best to get what you want for your district? I'm sure many of you know that a lot of the issues that face our school district overlap with state policy, and it's incredibly important that we elect school board members that understand our legislature and that we are able to get the best resources for our school district. And the third area would be a diverse perspective. I believe that my candidacy, and if elected to the board, I'd be able to serve as a voice for students and families of color. Students and families that may identify as LGBTQ, students and families that might not have traditionally been part of this process, but that we can bring in. And I believe that my understanding and critical issues from mental health work to technology to equity work would be an asset in this adventure.
Erica Ellenberg.
I think they're. I think there are two main things that distinguish me from the other candidates running for school board. One, I think, is the amount of time I've spent volunteering in the classroom at the ground level, working with teachers and students. I think that's vitally important to really understand what's going on when you are making decisions in a governance level from a strategic perspective, is knowing that. The second is that I basically have a microcosm of our school district in my family. I have a stepson that just graduated that soared through the system. He's gifted. He was on the gifted math track, and then in high school we realized he was in a class that was too advanced for him, and we had to drop him out of that class. And in the secondary education system, you have to understand how that affects class size. And I've seen how that works and how that affects, and you have to have kids at different levels to understand that. I have a daughter who is in the 80% of the bell curve, and she doesn't get any special services. And in fact, I called her teacher the other week to see if she was being challenged enough. So I probably annoyed her teacher, but I mean, that's what you have to do. And then my middle son has a very severe learning disability, and he has struggled socially, emotionally, and academically. And navigating the school district and being his advocate has been very humbling for me. It's opened my eyes to how the educational experience can be difficult for people, and that's why my slogan is "Every child, every school," because every child deserves to have a challenging academic experience, and that's a passion of mine.
Right. Chad Bell.
Thanks. So I think that Chris was correct. It's hard to really stand out amongst 12 very fine people who want to serve the community. So here, I'll just tell you what I think I bring to the table, and really at the end of the day, you'll decide if that's enough or not. But I think fundamentally one of the reasons, or one of the things I bring to the table that is at least something I believe is important, is the thought of making decisions with an empathetic view. I've been coaching Special Olympics for 20 years. I got started with that because a family member of ours was born with Down syndrome. And it could fundamentally change my life in terms of how I look at things. And through the years I've spent working with folks with special needs, I've learned a lot about how to not only communicate, but also what's important in terms of seeing the big picture when you're making decisions. There's not always one answer for everyone, and you shouldn't look to do that. I'm a person that is, I think I've got all the background and everything, but I'm also a person who's going to admit that when I make a mistake, and I'm going to be someone who is accountable for a decision, even if you maybe don't agree with it. But I'll be there to listen and hear what you have to say. But fundamentally what I want, I think, is what everyone else wants, is we want to make sure that we provide the best environment for the people that we serve, which are the parents and the kids. And that's the lens I'm going to use. I said before I'm running as a dad, and that's what I am. I have a job, I have things I do on the side, but fundamentally I'm just a dad. And it's important for me to make sure my kids and the kids I've gotten to know and the kids in the schools get a wonderful education, and I want to help do that. And so that's why I'm here, and that's what I'll bring to the table. Thanks.
Faisal Derry.
Thank you again. What differentiates me from all the other candidates, I think that we have the first time maybe one of the finest candidates in the history of Edina, and I was impressed when I read all their backgrounds. So what differentiates me, what I bring to the table. I thought about my skills. You can find them on my website, but we're going to in a time and in history that we need clearly to define and understand and appreciate, where people completely sometimes have a different views. What I bring to the table is the passion and the courage that I have, and I can listen to people who are on the extremes and people who are in the middle. And that's what our schools need is. And one of those things that people say that people would bring politics, someone like me who has two kids in the school, politics would never be part of my life, because what I want to make sure that I put the future of my kids above all politics and above all divisions. So what I would bring, the courage that I would stand for the taxpayers, and I would say that we need to be fair for all our taxpayers and make sure that if we're bringing politics, let's be fair and balance it. Would we ever be balanced? That is always would need a very critical interpretation. So why it's not easier for us to take politics and put education first? Because I want my kids to have the best public education and as everyone else. Thank you so much.
Matthew Fox.
Thank you. So, can I get him in the back? Yeah, good, okay. So, for me, what I wanted to make sure that I say here is that I think that being on the school board is about humility. We're here to serve the public. We're here to help all of you make sure all of your kids have what you need. And from that perspective, it takes a team. And right now, the team on the school board has a teacher. It has people that have policy experience and backgrounds in terms of making decisions that have to do with large budgets and large allocations. But from a perspective of what I've done in the past, with humility, I'd like to share 5 different things. The first one is I sit on boards now. So I sit on the board of a $500 million biotech company and the board of a rare disease foundation. So I have to figure out how to talk and not do this. So hold it. So I sit on the board of a $500 million biotech company and a rare disease foundation. So in both of those capacities, I'm trying to figure out how to serve children that have health illness. The second one is I've been an investor for over a decade and managed money the size of the Edina School Board. So the size of the Edina School District. So I'll make sure that we have all of the resources allocated for all of your children's needs. I would ask, as you look at the candidates, we can always say we want smaller class sizes, better busing schedules, but look at who has done it and how they'll do it. The third thing is I have a neuroscience background, so I care deeply about the curriculum and the STEM classes being really strong. The fourth one is I built a corporate strategy and operating plan at a pharmaceutical company, so I will push next year to have a strong new operating plan for Edina with transparency, accountability, and bring the community into that. And I'm also the CEO of a biotech company for kids with rare disease. So I do believe the culture is really important, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Okay. David Goldstein.
Thank you. Thank you. In 4 years of service on the board, I think I have established some credibility for being able to identify issues that matter and helping to work constructively with my colleagues on the board and the community to resolve those issues in meaningful and constructive ways. I think that's an important attribute to have and to bring to the board. As I look at our community today, I see issues that are potentially extremely divisive, but that also have the potential to bring about a healthy conversation and bring us to a better place as a school. And what I'd like to say is that I think if all of us on this panel, if all of us in this room can make it clear to everyone in our community that all children are welcome in our schools, regardless of their race, ethnicity, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, disability. All of them are welcome, and we have a duty to do our best to educate all of them. We're not always going to agree as to how to do that best, but if we can agree on that much, I'm comfortable we can come to a resolution, because we're a community here. I know all of you, most of you, on both sides of these issues. You're all good people. We just need to talk.
Heidi Hilliker.
Hi. I bring to the table a background of consulting, training, and development. I've worked with a lot of large businesses and vendors consulting, and asking the right questions. Is that the right decision that we need to make? Sometimes people think training is an issue, and sometimes it's just communication. So just being able to ask those right questions and listen to the community and your words and the voices that you have. I mean, our children need to have a voice. Our teachers need to have a voice, but our community also needs to have a voice. We need to support what our teachers need and the tools that they need to do their job, and we need to listen to our kids. We need to be able to support them in the ways that they need. They've gotten some amazing voices. I've seen them come in front of the school board and talk about issues that are really hard to talk about, and I'm amazed that a 14, 15-year-old kid can get up there and talk so clear and so concise and be like, I'm concerned, and sound like such an adult. I think it's amazing, and I think it's so great that we are all out here right now and everybody's speaking out, and I want to be able to speak to you, and you know what? We will make mistakes as a board, and we will make decisions, but we can always change them, and that's being you guys giving us that voice and us listening. So I want to be that person to listen for our community.
Ellen Jones.
Hi. I think I am unique among this table for 3 reasons. One, it's my capacity. I have the ability to spend my time working for this district in ways that no one else here has. I waited until my youngest child graduated from school, and so that I could devote my time to this job. If you look at my material here or on my website, you can see how involved I was at every step of the school organization. And so I know what it takes, and in that you'll see I spent 6 years on the park board. I know what it takes in order to create policy and make positive change for the community. I have done that. I've done that in the parks. I've done that in our schools. I would be happy to share my experiences with you. I'm one of the few that actually has, besides the incumbents, created policy change in this district. So the difference is that the other difference is my perspective. Because my kids are grown, I know what's important. My kids are out of college. Some of them are. They have shared with me their experiences and what was important here in Edina. And the last is, I also bring an open mind to working with all sides. I was raised by both a Democrat and a Republican, and I take down and think critically about all issues on that.
All right. Okay, we will now pose 2 general topic questions. These were not released in advance. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. And the first is, school board members often have to make difficult choices about programs given limited budgets and resources. What are your top 3 priorities for maintaining a balanced budget while meeting the district's mission of serving all learners? And we will start with Owen Michelson.
Well, the first thing is, I learned something from Chad Bell the last time we were together, and he said that if you're going to run for school board, you got to understand you're never going to be popular. So you're going to make decisions that people won't like, but you have to look at the best interests of the community as a whole. So I'm looking for input from the community in terms of what are the priorities, and first and foremost is the education of our students. We have a budget shortfall, and we're asking for a levy, which I support. But I think we need to be a little bit more strategic about how these budgets are planned so we don't kind of go from shortage to shortage to shortage. I'd like to evaluate how our funding is derived. Much of the funding that comes from the school and the budget that derives from it is not in the school district's hands. Much of it is dictated to it by the legislature. And I would like to open up some liaisons with the legislature about how we can appropriate the funds a little bit more equitably. So I believe in community input and being as frugal as we possibly can. I think another goal that I would like to see happen is a rigorous audit of this. A rigorous audit. And I question why we have almost $2 million in outside consulting fees. And I'd like to see that cut down quite a bit and directed toward educational purposes.
Okay, Lisa O'Brien.
Can you hear me back there? Sorry. So It is true. Most of our finances that come to the Edina Public Schools are out of our control. They're dictated by state and federal laws. But the resources that we have, it's a partnership. The levy is the partnership right now to get us to get that operating budget to continue forward. It is vital. If that $13 million to cut that in 1 year will be very difficult. And so we really want to make sure as a partnership that we're using those and making those decisions wisely. What I would like to do is have a community discussion about what does it mean to have an Edina education? What does it mean for that diploma for every student? So that we can, as we look back to the next strategic planning visions, we can have that discussion and make sure that every voice, staff, parents, students' voices are all heard, so that then we can allocate, once that's clear, we can allocate those finances directly. I didn't see if you held up a sign, I'm sorry. Which sign did you hold up? Okay, thank you, sorry. And then I also would like, I would like the administration, as a board member, to ask the administration to look at all our different programming. A lot of times we start programming and it becomes an institution when we really serving and who are the children's needs that it isn't being served. To do that, and then we can allocate those finances as well. Thank you.
Okay, Chris Tischer.
Thank you. So the three items that I would like to focus on as a school board member, initially one would be making sure that we're doing an exhaustive review of the contracts that we have with outside vendors, ensuring that we have the best contracts in place that we can. We're being cost effective, we're managing those expenses as best as possible as a school district. Second thing that I would like to focus on is trying to be creative as far as some of the solutions that we have. Looking for opportunities where we can get our students in front of the best teachers that we have within the district, and at the same time not reducing the adult to student ratio that those students have, but looking for those creative opportunities where we've got everybody when they went through their educational career had teachers that they thought were great, and having all of our students have the opportunity to get in front of those same teachers, but at the same time making sure that we're also putting additional adult resources in place to make sure that individual needs are being met. And following up on that, on the individual needs front, making sure that the resources that we do have are being best applied to the students, making sure that we're meeting their needs as individuals, with a focus, I think, on STEM opportunities or STEM curriculum. Those are going to be where the job opportunities of today and tomorrow are coming from. So making sure that all of our students have the opportunity to get access to all of those.
Gabe Adderhold.
So the first area that I think is really critical with this question is really reviewing our budget line item and looking at what is an important expenditure and also understanding areas that we can potentially cut back. I think that our district currently is over-reliant on consulting services. Every year we spend tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars on outside consultants that I think we could really utilize the strength of what makes our school so great, and that is our community. We have lawyers, we have CEOs, we have individuals that would be able to best serve our schools, where I believe, into my second point, that money should really be focused on teaching and learning, that we need to ensure that our educators are not worried if they will have a job next year because of budget cuts, and that we need to focus more of our efforts on direct teaching and learning. And the third area I would say is when we look at the Berg model, budget reduction, reallocation, and revenue generation, we need to consider that revenue generation point. We need to look at potentially ways that our school district can bring in more revenue so that we don't have to make tough cuts. So when we look at grant writing or other initiatives to bring in more revenue for our school district. So for me, it's looking first and foremost at going through our budget, looking at areas that our consulting services may be excessive, and we can direct more of that into our classroom, and then to ways that we can generate more revenue so that we do not have to tell a teacher that their job has been cut.
Erica Allenberg.
For me, the three important things would be, one is when we're when we have to make difficult decision is one, have a very clearly defined decision-making process and utilizing relevant data whenever possible when making a decision. And that's something that's very important to me, and I have a background in process improvement, and I would like to apply that to the board. Second, I think we need to utilize more community input when making financial decisions. For example, when we look at the start time issue, why don't we ask parents, are they willing to, for example, to pay to bus from 1 mile to 2 miles? Why don't we go to parents and say, these are our options from a financial perspective. We have a limited amount of money. What are your priorities, community? And get that feedback before we make major financial decisions. I think that's something very important that we do not do very often. The third thing is we have such an opportunity here in the Edina community to utilize corporations, to utilize resources that we have right here in the room to alleviate expenses. And I would love to see us partner with, I was just at a medical symposium the other day. Why don't we partner with a company to build a STEM lab right in our high school and utilize ways that we could be creative with our finances as opposed to paying for everything. So those are 3 ways that I would like to approach that.
Sure. School board members often have to make difficult choices about programs given limited budgets and resources. What are your top 3 priorities for maintaining a balanced budget while meeting the district's mission of serving all learners?
So, sorry about that. Okay, so how I look at this is there's obviously this is what you say in the business world, or at least where I've worked, there's one bucket of money we're working from. So this is what we have. The first thing you look is what's the greatest amount of good we can do with what we have. The second thing is obviously let's look at what we're spending, and let's start with some of the things that I mentioned already, or what are the things we don't need to do anymore, or that we can affect and will have a very limited to no effect on how we run our schools. The consulting fees have been brought up. It's an excellent point. The idea of raising more revenue and the buses is another very good point. The other thing is when we do have a cut that affects people, let's say it's, I'll use my own personal example. My daughter takes Chinese at Southview. There's only like a few kids in it now, and there's some issues with scheduling. It's one of those things that comes up. Let's say they were going to decide to drop it just because of cuts or what have you. The first thing you need to do is be very out front with the parents and if people affected and say, okay, this is coming. We don't know how to fix it. Let's get together and see what we can do to find a solution, okay? Because we are going to have to sometimes bring news to the masses that is not something that we want to bring. But let's be up front, open, and early on, let's try to find solutions to affect everyone as best we can. And that's it. I'll stop.
Vice Laderi.
So some of the critical things that I, take as a decision maker at the board, I think sometimes, a school board is not the most places where you get a good feedback. A lot of times, whether you do good or not, you sometimes get, some people who criticize you. So this is where the transparency is very critical. So how would I do that transparency? So I would focus first and foremost based on my experience. I've done a lot of finance transformation, process optimization, process evaluation. So I would evaluate each process and programs and see those that are effective and impact the student learning and education. Those programs that are not producing the defined results, those are the programs that we will review and first look at, not the programs that are producing results. One of the programs that Edina is known is the personalized learning. So that's really a good program. Is it a program that is the best program and how it was implemented? So sometimes I would look at how the programs are implemented. Can we look at a different and more efficient way we can roll out programs? So always I will rely on the data and I will gather data. My decisions would always be data driven, and I will share that data with the folks, with the community, and engage and get their input. So that would be part of the data. I will not make a decision on my own.
Matthew Fox.
Thank you. I love this question. So this gives us a sense of how to explain to the community how we would address the issues that all of you are thinking about to serve all of our children. So I actually made notes, which I don't often do. For a strategic plan to be built at the beginning of 2018 is absolutely imperative for all of us. So when we step back and look at where we want to go, we shouldn't start with the budget line. When you start with the budget line, your thinking is constrained. We should say, what do all of our students need to be successful? And the way we do that is we set up a large town hall meeting. Everyone is there. We have a big whiteboard. There's full transparency. We write every single thing about the busing system, every single thing about the levy that's concerning, class sizes. We write those up there. Everyone can see it. Then the board is accountable. We must then take that in the next step. My phone just went out. We must take that in the next step and review it internally. It's our responsibility to then match that to what are our current services, what we want to develop and build, and what we want to do from a business development relationship with the community. And I've built, negotiated, and developed new relationships with companies in the genetic or medical space or other areas, and I will bring those into the school and the board. The third thing is, then we put together a calendar, and as a board, we share that calendar and timeline with the entire community. So no big decisions sneak up on any of you. You have time to give feedback before the final decision is made, and that transparency and accountability will make sure that we are thinking about all of your students first. We don't miss anything. We can humbly serve you on the board, and that every child will have the opportunity to reach their highest potential. Thank you.
David Goldstein.
As we continue to think about these processes of adjusting budget, it is absolutely important that we be transparent and that we get community input. So I completely agree with those things. In terms of what needs to be prioritized during these processes, I go into it thinking that these are the three things that, from my perspective, are most important at the moment. Improving science, technology, engineering, arts, and math throughout our 12 grades in appropriate ways is, I think, first. Second, I think there's a lot we can do to improve our senior year experience, which would both involve saving money and give our students a more useful experience in terms of getting out into the community for internships and jobs or other pre-college opportunities that will be more valuable to them. A lot of our senior year currently is not particularly well used. And then third, improving our world language program in the elementary schools is clearly of vital importance. Thank you.
Heidi Hilliker.
Hi. So I think I agree with a lot of people here. I think the biggest thing here is taking a look at our budget, line item by line item, seeing what we're spending our money on, seeing where it's actually going to, asking questions about those budgets. Is it effective? Is that are we doing what we're supposed to do with that budget? Looking at the contracts we have, see even if there's people within the community that actually can support that contract work. I think the town halls are the way to go for us to just reach out to you and say, hey, this is what we've got going on. Let's take your feedback. Let's understand it. And then you understand the transparency is what the school board is making the decisions on, and you have a voice and are able to say, hey, I can help with that. I can do that, and we can take that off the plate and put that money towards our teachers, because I think our teachers need the support that we need to give them. Our teachers need more education around bullying, more education around the new technologies that are out there, all those things that they can support our kids so that they have these good conversations that are around equity, around diversity, around inclusion, because I think that's where our biggest win is we have such great teachers who care so much about this community, and we need to figure out ways where we can support them better so that our students can become the students that we want them to be for the future.
Ellen Jones.
Okay, so how I would approach this is, number one, I want Edina to be the school of choice for all of our residents. So what is it that we have to do in order to do that? Because my goal is that all residents will look at what we are offering and say, that's the best. And actually, we've been doing a pretty good job of that so far, but we need to reevaluate and look at, do we still have that competitive edge? And so if we are not, I want to keep the students we have. I don't want students to choose some other option. So that's number one. Number two, I think my priority will always be putting the child first. So what is their experience at the school, their teacher, and their classroom makeup? So if I have a choice to make on what my money is going to go into, it's going to be into that classroom experience, trying to make that classroom experience the best it can be by supporting our teachers and by supporting those kids. And then finally, I am also incredibly a process person. So the issue that I see is I want to engage all people. I want to make sure that we follow our process, and I'm running out of time. Sorry.
Right. Matt Laux.
Okay, great. My three priorities within our current budget are maintaining academic excellence, creating an environment where all students feel part of a learning community, and then getting politics out of the school. Let's look at the first one. Right now, we have a lot of pilots that are going on, but the school district has not released, A, how much they cost, or B, whether or not they have worked. We have done a poor job of measuring what we were trying to figure out, and then following along, did our pilots work? We're all adults. If the pilot did not work, tell us, but don't not be transparent about that. So I think we could do a lot better job on that front. B, in terms of a welcoming environment, I've heard phrases, how to think, and we need to talk more. That is true, but here's something you need to think about. What must it feel like to walk off of the black bus, to carry around a computer where everybody knows you didn't buy it, to wear clothes that are maybe not as nice as everybody else? We need to not so much talk about, but create an environment where all learners feel part of the community. And lastly, in terms of our budget and politics, if there are administrators right now who are not enforcing a policy that says politics should be out of the classroom, then we need to find administrators who will, okay? And by the way, if politics shouldn't be in the classroom, should they be in the school board? I would say no.
Okay, thank you. And the next general topic question for everyone, again, you'll have 90 seconds to answer this. Last week, an article about the Edina Public Schools was published in the magazine Thinking Minnesota. What are your thoughts about the article? We will start with Lisa O'Brien.
Yes, I've read the article. I've also, can you hear me? I'm sorry. No? No? Now? Hold on. Okay. Yes, I've read the article. It's not new. These blog posts actually came out sort of over the summer. So I was aware of the concerns before then. If you know a topic really well, and you've ever read an article in the newspaper or in a magazine, you notice that nuances are often missed, and you get frustrated. What I would say, and that often the reporters inadvertently imply things that may not be true, or they paint broad strokes over an entire group. Here are the things that I want to talk about. How many of these personal stories happened last year or 2 years ago, or starting from this school year? Within the last 12 months, we've had a new superintendent, new principals, new middle school principals. We have a lot of change. And so it's inaccurate to say, as a friend of mine once said, nothing ever changes. We've made a lot of changes. So to the contrary, I would say that this much change actually occurred without a lot of attention. It was done intentionally, professionally, and not politically. Also, the school board that shows little concern for this. That is not true. We've been talking about this for months. We've been talking about how all students need to have the ability, no matter where they stand and who they are, to voice their concerns. And their free speech rights are paramount.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chris Tischer.
Well, I think in my personal opinion, the one good thing that came out of that article was it got the conversation going. There's been a lot of people within the community that are now talking about this and voicing their opinions. And the opinions that I've heard from a majority are people voicing their support for the equity and diversity work that we as a school district are doing. And I think we need to continue that. As I read the article, the things that I kind of took away from it is the author was trying to make a point by bringing two things together within the article, but they never made any correlation between the two. They talk about declining test scores. Then they talk about the diversity work that we're doing within the district. But there's never any sort of indication that the diversity work that's being done within the district is having any sort of impact, positive or negative, on the test scores that we have as a district. Do we need to look at both of those? Yes, obviously. We need to find out why are our test scores declining. But granted, it's not like they've been declining for years and years and years. This could be an aberration. But without further analysis and further an investigation in it, we're not going to be able to know. And to sit there and say that the diversity work that our district is doing is having an impact negatively on our students, to me, is
Thank you,
a little
Chris.
bit ridiculous.
Okay. Gabe Adderhold.
I disagree with the assessment of this article, and I just wanted to offer this statement. To our incredible elementary school teachers that are bringing in themes of equity and inclusion, I support you. I always have, and I always will. To our high school teachers that are bringing in critical new perspectives with new literature, I support you. I always have, and I always will. Talking about equity and inclusion doesn't come at the expense of academic excellence. It helps define it. Speaking to the humanity of each and every child, bringing in new perspectives, and allowing for new critical thinking skills. I know this is an incredibly divisive issue in our community, but I want you to know that even if this is a decisive issue for your vote on November 7th, I'm still your neighbor. And as your neighbor, I care about what you feel and think. I respond to every phone call and every email. I want town hall meetings where we can have these dialogues even if we do not agree. I still believe that there's far more that unites us than divides us. Whether it be talking about concerns with fiscal responsibility, or with smaller class sizes, or personalized learning, at the end of the day, I hope we can come together and talk about those things, which really do impact our schools.
Erica Allenberg.
To be quite frank, I was angry that data was cherry-picked. The worst few data variables possible were cherry-picked to make our district look as bad as possible. I have a couple other data points that I pulled out to show a different viewpoint of our district. Fourth grade 2017 MCA data, Edina has a 90% proficiency rating. We're the top of almost every district in the Minnesota. I just wonder why that data was not shown. For the subgroup of blacks, Hispanics, and 2 or more races, we beat the Rosemont district by over 20 data points. So again, why is that not shown? It's because the author wanted us to look as bad as possible. And that is not a fair assessment of our school district. There's zero conclusive evidence that there's any correlation between score drops and talking about equity in our schools. None. That would require regression analysis or a long-term test with isolated variables. I have my suspicion why there could be score drops in the high school. We haven't looked at technology. We haven't looked at the role of class sizes. We haven't looked at anything else. And that is not fair. I firmly believe that politics do not belong in our school system, but we should use this as an opportunity to model civil discourse among adults, the same thing that we want to have our students model. And that is what I think about this article.
Chad Bell.
So I read it like everybody else, and I'd heard some of these things prior. My main reaction was what was going on at the high school, and mostly because of friends I know who had kids who experienced some things that you wish they wouldn't have to go through. So my immediate concern was, okay, just in specifically what's going on, these issues brought up in the high school, you worry about, are these kids being treated properly? Do we just need to know more? I do not think there is a systemic issue with our schools. I don't think there's a systemic issue because my kids haven't experienced it. What I read in the article was concerning. It's also an opportunity for us to maybe be better as citizens. I think part of the reason the articles like this come out is maybe folks feel like they're not being listened to. And since this has come out, in some ways you've seen people try to get better at talking to each other. We've got to have more of a dialogue as a community on these things and be less encouraged of who's right and who's wrong and more of like, what are we trying to get to? So I guess that's kind of where I'm at. I don't believe that what was put in there around test scores is correlated because there was not data there. It's a talking point. But fundamentally, what I would like to see come out of this is we can actually chat with each other on things and try to get to a common viewpoint of doing what's right for the people that we serve, which is the kids and the teachers as well. So my take on it was, hey, I wish it didn't have to be written. It was. We're here now. How do we work together to make it better and make sure we get a better experience for the people that we serve? Thanks.
Faisal Deri.
So, like everyone else, I also read the article. So, what I believe is, first and foremost, we need to remind ourselves that we have one of the excellent education in the state. We have been leading the state. We may be now number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. It doesn't matter. But what matters is that we are in the leadership still. And I believe, and I always said that where Edina goes, the state goes. So if we fail the whole state. So we need to get back and lead the state in tests and everywhere. And also what I think that, and I appreciate as much as I disagree some of the comments, is that it opened a dialogue where we need to evaluate. And the minute I play soccer, in the minute you go defense, that's the minute you lose. You always need to have both offense and defense. So we need to protect and defend our teachers. And one thing that bothered me, that our teachers should not be the first line of defense. I think the board should be the first line of defense. I think the administration should be the first line of defense. I think the community should be the first line of defense. Why would we allow our teachers to be the first line of defense? So once we occupy them for something else, they would not be able to teach and do the most important job we have in Edina. We have a lot of other important jobs, but to me, with my 2 kids, I believe teachers are doing the best job, and they're not get paid as many others who are sitting here, but they're doing out of passion. And we want to make sure that we are the first line of defense, and I will always be, as a board member, the first line of defense.
Matthew Fox.
Thank you. So I read the article about 24 times. What I tried to do was every time I read it, I thought about it from a different perspective. What if I had lived in Edina for 30 years? What if I had been here for 1 year? What if I was conservative? What if I was liberal? Because our role is to represent all of you and make sure that we do the best for our students. So after reading everything, the one thing I will say about the article is whenever I've written something or read something, you look for what the solutions are that are provided. If the author doesn't provide any solutions or any upside, I'm done with the article. The next thing is, as next steps, what I did was I called ex-principals. I called the Vote Yes Committee. I called the superintendent. I called school board members. I had over 50 phone calls with people in the community and over 100 individual emails over the course of the next 6 days. Because that is how I learn. Our role is to serve you. We don't know all the answers. And if I'm supposed to represent everyone in the community, I need to hear from everyone in the community. And there are valid voices that are concerned about our curriculum and our test scores, and valid voices that are concerned about our diversity and equity. I believe strongly in diversity, equity, and that globalization makes us a stronger district and a stronger leader in the state. I believe strongly that we have great teachers. I believe strongly that the data will show that Edina continues to be a leader, and at the same time, it is only through listening to each other, thank you, and having these difficult conversations that we know where we stand. But as soon as we line up chest to chest, the only way to get to the answer is through the other person. So I will be someone who listens and works with all of us to make the best outcome for all of our kids. Thank you.
David Goldstein.
So first, to be clear, the impression that the article tries to create regarding an over-politicization of our schools in general is simply false. It's not what's going on. Second, the impression the article tries to create of generally falling standards or test scores is simply false. That's not what's going on. And in fact, the board has a workshop tonight at which the world's greatest workforce statistics will be discussed. If you want to know more about where our test scores are and what they mean, come to the workshop, or the materials have been on the board's website, the school district's website, for quite a while. That said, some of the concerns that are discussed in that article have been expressed. I know some of the people who expressed those concerns, and those concerns had a right to be addressed. And I'm the first to say that it has been a frustration that our former high school principal, who I love and think a great deal of, did not always give these types of concerns the listening that they deserved or the respect they deserved. That was a mistake. That's partially a cause of this problem. And I think in our hiring of our new superintendent and in our hiring of our new principal, you're going to see a very different types of people in terms of their willingness to listen and their willingness to take into account people's feelings. It doesn't mean policies are going to change. It doesn't mean that you're going to like everything they do, but there's going to be real dialogue and policies will be enforced.
Thank you. Heidi Hilliker.
I read the article too, and I actually listened to a lot of voices on blogs and people talking about the article. And it was really amazing to me to see how engaged our community was about this and how everybody's voice, they actually stood out. I mean, there's a lady at Cornelia who's taking all the magazines and she's going to walk up to that company's building and give that back to them because the data is not true. And I just think that this is a great opportunity. I think this article fostered us all to make a stand and make a difference and try to ensure that our board members are making the right decisions, that our teachers are making the right decisions, that we're actually asking our kids, hey, what's going on at school? You know, and having those conversations like, you know, are you having issues? Are you getting bullied? Talk to them about it. Listen to them, because it's not only our teachers' responsibility, our board responsibility, but it's our parents' responsibility to have those conversations with our kids so that we make them smarter. We need to provide them tools and our teachers tools to be able to get smarter around those conversations and be transparent as a board team to give you guys those answers as to why we make those decisions and why we're communicating the things we're communicating. And be willing to say, hey, we did make a mistake. So I think it's a really great opportunity. I think the magazine, it was hard. It was hard to read. Wasn't accurate, but it brought us all out here. And that's what's really cool is now we're having those conversations and we're looking at those facts and statistics in a way that makes sense.
Ellen Jones.
So this is the hot topic. I've been knocking on doors, and I tell you, after a week of that, everyone has a question, and everyone deserves an answer. I see this as a question that everyone is wondering, do I think that there's a problem? How do I see it? Number one, I agree. They cherry-picked the data. Our ACT scores, the tests that the kids take, that you all want your kids to do so well on, our ACT scores went up in 2017, and we are at the top of the state. So if you want to go to my website, I have a graph on that. You can compare us to the other public high schools of our kind, and you'll see it. So I really take exception to the way that we have been painted as a failing district. Secondly, the correlation between whether or not we are teaching our all for all and whether that is going to reduce our test scores is just not made. And, oh crap. Okay, there's so much more to be said. I am very responsive. I am appalled that we are having to have this conversation. I want to respect all people. Thank you.
All right. Matt Laux.
So as has been said, the author confuses correlation with causation. So let's look at three different things. Test scores, the ability to talk about race and politics in the class. As was noted, two data points were cherry-picked. Well, as some of you may know, the MCA is given to all third and eighth graders across 6 elementary schools and 2 middle schools. That's 48 other data points that were ignored. Are you curious what that said? I was, so I checked. Proficiency rates across reading and math were about the 75% range, the 89% range. Okay, so I think things are just fine. Including Highlands, which was pointed out, is at 87% math and 79% reading. So I think those parents are probably pretty pleased with that. Okay, getting to Ellen's point. What is the motivation of somebody doing an 11th grade MCA math test? They're much more motivated to do well on the ACT. Let's quickly talk about race and politics. We should talk about race, okay? We should understand the view of the world from folks who do not look like us, and this can occur in school. But politics has no place. As an educator, you have to walk a fine line of facilitating a talk, but not inserting your own views. And that is a challenge that we as educators have, but you have to build a rapport with students in order for that to
Thank you. Owen Michelson.
We all have animating reasons for getting into the race. And my animating reason occurred last fall when I was hearing stories of teachers at the high school openly denigrating political candidates and promoting other candidates. That has no place in the classroom. The second thing is, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but another thing that drove me into this is the 10th grade pre-AP literature class, which is based off of controversial political topics. It's based off of critical race theory, and it applies an equity lens on everything. Those are highly controversial political subjects. Now, some people are just going, that's the world I live in. I didn't know that. Doesn't everybody believe that? No, because a lot of that is very pigment aware. I believe in colorblind race relations. And these critical race theory and the equity lens is not that. It's trying to make us much more aware of race and not that we're all part of one common family. Now, the magazine in the Center for the American Experiment, the article, to me it came late to the game. I've been concerned about this for a long time. I didn't produce their evidence, but it raises questions that many of us have been concerned with for a long time, and I think it's a very important discussion to start, and the new superintendent and principal of the high school have begun that.
Okay. Thank you all. We now move on to the lightning round. I will randomly draw questions, and only one candidate gets to respond to each question. If time permitted, they're all excellent questions. We'd love to hear what everyone says, but time does not permit. These, you get 60 seconds to it's on. I don't know. Each candidate will get 60 seconds to respond to one question. They're all different questions. So if you have questions for the candidates that didn't get to respond, find them after the forum. All right, we will start with Chris Tischer. What do you think about the challenge between building an academically inclusive learning environment versus grouping students according to ability and readiness?
Well, one of the primary items that I've tried to espouse as part of my campaign is making sure that we're treating students as individuals. Everybody learns individually. So even just trying to break it down into smaller groups and saying, okay, well, these 10 individuals, we're all going to try and teach them this way, and these 10 individuals, we're going to try and teach this way. I still think that fails our students as a whole. We need to continue to work for some of the items that we as a district have already been doing with the personalized learning, and find ways for us to be able to reach each individual student, as opposed to thinking that, even by just breaking it down into subgroups, that we're going to be able to affect positively all of the individuals within the district.
Thank you. Gabe Adderhold. What do you consider to be the two biggest successes for Edina Public Schools in the last year?
I think the first area of great success that we've had in this past year is, part of it is I think that we've done a remarkable job with the transition with the 9th graders at the high school. It hasn't been perfect, of course. I've definitely heard stories of incidences which are frustrating, but there was a lot of fear, I know, over the summer and before this happened, that it would be something that could potentially cause a lot of chaos, and I think that the school district has managed that remarkably well. The second area of success, I'd say, over the past year, I would say, is the continuation of academic excellence in our schools. I know that there have been concerns about a few specific areas, but I think that over the past year we've seen we've seen growth in students taking AP classes and doing well on getting 4s and 5s in those classes, and our ACT scores as well.
All right. Erica Ellenberg. If elected, what key strategies would you employ to ensure the school board is able to function effectively as a group, while also honoring the individual voices of its members?
I think one thing that I would like to work on is coming up with a clear and definitive decision-making process. And I think if you can define a decision-making process, I think it actually helps people interact. Because if you have, for example, in meetings, if you have, okay, tonight we're going to work on X, Y, and Z, and you can clearly define what you're doing at what point in time, it not only does it help you get a lot more done, but I think it helps focus everyone's energy on what you're going to be doing for that point in time. And I think everyone, I mean, something that I've worked on in every meeting that when I would brainstorm stuff with my advertising agency is no idea is a bad idea, and we have to keep an open mind for everything whenever we come to the table. And so when you're brainstorming or something, we just have to keep a lens on everyone's input is valuable, and I think that's something that is very important to me to bring to the board. So,
All right, Chad Bell. What is the best way to balance enrollment in the various schools?
Can I get another question?
There's lots in here.
I'm milking my
Everyone has a
time,
right
as you
to
can
pass.
see. No, I'm not. Okay, so here's my take. The best way is, it depends on what balance means, but I'll go with what I think it means. So I would first look to make sure that all the students who live in our city get to go to our schools, right? That's number one for me, just because, we live here. I think you should get to do that. The second thing you might want to look at is, based on what we know about an individual student, where's the best opportunity for them to learn and grow, right? It might be that one school is actually better for that person than the other. Beyond that, it's not necessarily, I look at it as, you can certainly look at classroom sizes and things like that to make sure we have the right balance. That's probably a key as well. But fundamentally, it's can all of our kids go to our schools? Do we put the kids in the right schools where they can succeed? And we make sure we don't overload schools so they have more kids than they can serve.
Faisal Dairy. In your opinion, what qualities are the most important for an effective school board member?
A school board member should always be very transparent. That's one of the most important, and also school board member must also work and represent the district. And represent the district means that we must make sure that our district has effective fiscal responsibility and make sure that we spend our resources, limited resources, where they matter. Like Owen said, we must make sure that if there are students or others who have concerns or who cannot express their opinions, we must empower them and make sure tomorrow we can produce one of our young girls that go to our schools to become the president of the United States. If she cannot express her political opinions today, she will not have the courage to lead our country. So we want to make sure that a school board makes sure that we have our policies and they're not collecting dust on the shelves, but they are enforced. And those policies must be a well-defined policies, clear and simple. Thank you.
Matthew Fox.
Feels like a fortune cookie.
I know, it is. How will you balance the responsibilities of the school board along with your other personal and professional responsibilities?
Was this one for me? Is that?
You've been wondering it?
So, yeah. Great. Well, thanks for asking that. I hope my board is not watching this closely. But in the past 5 weeks, I've had over 110 meetings. 110 meetings in the past 5 weeks. As CEO of my own company, I have an exceptional team. I have 5 PhDs, 2 MBAs, and 2 other team members. I trust them. The same way in a governance role, it's not governance as CEO of a company, you have to also operate it. But you want to put the right people in the right places to execute on what's best for the community. And in my case, I serve children with rare disease at work, and here I would be serving all of your children on the school board. So there are areas. I had an email last week from a father who said, my child has autism. How will you make sure that they can transition from high school to life after high school? And I said, I'll look to you, I'll look to administrators, I'll look to staff to help me understand what resources you need to get there. So it's about making sure you have the time and you listen and you balance your time. But for me, I manage my own schedule, so I'm here this morning. Thank you.
David Goldstein. How can the district ensure that its mission and vision are applied consistently across all schools and programs, yet still allow for individual school and program identities and cultures?
Well, I think we went a long way toward doing that in our hiring of our superintendent, because that is primarily the superintendent's responsibility. And I think you do that by having appropriate principals in each of the buildings, making sure that they are working together and collaborating, all under the superintendent's direction and with the assistance of the board.
Make it an easy one.
Oh.
Make it an easy one. I'm just
Whatever is
kidding.
left. Heidi Hilliker. Okay. What civic organizations, businesses, or advocacy groups do you have a connection with? And if elected, how do you see these affiliations impacting your work as a school board member?
There's not really a lot that I'm actively involved in. More so is just my students' life, my boys, what they're involved in. So when it comes to my boys, my oldest one is in Lego robotics. He also is in Boy Scouts, and my involvement there is just supporting that community. And it's been great because I've learned a lot about the STEM programs. I didn't know so much about Lego robotics, and it's amazing. I didn't know about Heritage Day until my son got involved with Heritage Day, and there's tons of scholarships with that. My youngest son is in wrestling and baseball and soccer. And wrestling is probably the youth program's in its 3rd year now. And it's just amazing to see all these athletic programs that weren't involved in this community. And it's just really cool to get it from the ground up started. So I think just figuring out those programs and things that not every kid is involved in. Not every kid's involved in hockey, baseball, soccer, swimming. There's programs like Heritage Day and Lego robotics and things like that where you can get scholarships and learn things about life that actually get you your careers and jobs. So that's what I would bring.
Okay, Ellen Jones. What is the role of the school board in addressing the mental health and wellness of students?
Well, first of all, the school board is setting policy. So what types of policies are we going to create so that the students will have sufficient health and wellness? I believe I base all of my decisions on what is best for the child. And I don't think a child can learn if they are having issues about feeling threatened or are unwelcomed or have problems in the home that need to be fixed. And they come into the school and a teacher sees who they are and what they need and has no support for that. So what policies can we create that can support the students so that learning for each student can be constant? So that would be how I would approach it. Thank you.
All right, Matt Laux. What is your opinion on the role of technology in the classroom?
Okay, great. In general, what I would say is that technology can add to but should not replace the learning experience. Students learn best when they have interaction with human beings, with educators. It was pointed out earlier that apparently having the classroom experience is not important to being on the board. I disagree. I know firsthand what works well with kids and what does not in the classroom. All students need to be challenged, okay? That does not mean that only a subset gets direct one-on-one, say, guided reading with adults, while other students who may be at above grade level are put on a computer to do mundane tasks and are not challenged. If there is a way that technology can challenge all students, great. But as it stands now, it is not being used in the right way. It's kind of a waste of time, and our students deserve better, and they can perform higher than you would believe if given that chance.
Okay. Owen Michelson. Given the changing demographics of the community, how can the school board provide leadership that is representative of all voices and families in the community?
First off, the growing diversity of the district is great. I think that it offers all of our students the chance to rub shoulders and become aware of other lifestyles, other backgrounds, other ethnicities. So I think it's fantastic. And I think programs where the students interact with each other and see each other as fellow human beings advances that. And I'm thrilled that our district is expanding in that way. And the schools have had a remarkable degree of harmony among the various races, and we have varying income levels. So I'm seeing very high success with that.
Okay, Lisa O'Brien. Even though the district has started to take steps to close the achievement gap in Edina Public Schools, the gap still exists. What steps do you think are most effective and which should be reconsidered?
So people usually laugh when I say this, but show me the data. So not every student who is not performing is the same, and they're not performing for the same reasons. If we really need to do a deep dive into the data and to see what is going on with those students and partner with the parents and the teachers to see what may work best. If this child comes into our district in 8th grade, and is not performing, or one who started in kindergarten and is not performing, those may be very different reasons. And so we need to look towards our staff and our parents and the student to find out how best to meet their needs. We also need proper assessments to make sure that, and you get the results in a timely fashion, so that you can actually adjust instruction to meet those needs. And to have really clear goals, so the child knows what is being expected of them. So it comes down to data and partnership.
Thank you all for thinking on your feet. We have quite a few audience questions, and we will not have time to address all of them. They are in a pile here, and I'm going to grab randomly from there, and we will give each candidate 60 seconds to respond to a couple of audience questions before we do our final question. All right. The first question, what will you do to assure Edina home values remain high, which is a direct correlation to a strong school district? All right. Gabe Adderhold.
Oh, there it goes. Well, first is I recommend enthusiastically a yes vote on the referendum this fall, which most certainly will have an impact on the quality of our schools and your home values. I think that the biggest focus here is making sure that we continue to maintain or increase the percentage of families that live in the district that are sending their kids to Edina schools. That is what is one of the main reasons that our schools are so successful. So I know that there was a poll done of the district earlier this year which reviewed the major concerns of residents. And I believe that we really do need to talk with those residents that have concerns with our school district and look at ways that we can, you know, almost like an exit interview with individuals that are leaving our school district to identify ways that we can do a better job. So the best way that we can improve, keep home values, vote yes on November 7th, and then let's have conversations about those that aren't feeling included in our schools.
Thanks. Erica Allenberg.
I think, I mean, as Gabe said, obviously we need to vote yes for the levy. That's vitally important for our school district's success. I think two other ways that I see that we can maintain home values is, A, keep doing what we're doing. We have an outstanding school district that's so excellent in many ways, and any notion otherwise is just a fallacy. That being said, I mean,
Sweet. Keep going, Erica.
do you want me to continue?
Sure.
Okay.
I think that was an accident. Yeah. Sorry.
Do you want me to go on?
I think someone just hit
Okay.
lights
Okay.
by accident.
Sure.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not that interesting of a person. So now do you want me to go? Got it? Okay. Okay. That being said, I mean, if there is a decline in test scores or something, we have to look into it. We have to see what is going on, and we have to establish benchmarks for success, and then we have to make sure we're meeting those success points or exceeding those success points. How do we do that? We look into, is there variability in curriculum execution? Is there standardization across our elementary schools? How is the best way to group learners? Do we have measurements from pilots for that? We have to have data-oriented learning, and we have to grow from there. And I think that's how we maintain our excellence. The end. Thank you.
Thank you. Chad Bell.
So I'm on the levy bandwagon. So I would encourage people to support that. I think it is important. The other thing I would look at is we want to stay vigorous with the schools to make sure they continuously improve. It's like anything in life. If you're a runner and you only go out once a week, you're not going to run a marathon very well. It's keeping up with what we're doing to make sure we're challenging ourselves as a leadership group to make sure that we've got the right processes and plans in place. As far as the improving home values, obviously if the schools are strong, it tends to be that cities are strong. But I would also say it's very important that discourse is important as well. Nobody wants to move into a city where people don't talk to each other. And I think that as a community, we have an opportunity to treat each other more like neighbors and less like maybe political foes at times, because this is a great place to live. And I think that we have a lot to offer, and we have wonderful people here. So that's what I would suggest.
All right. Faisal Derry.
So for me, I always think about, our kids. Our kids is most important and more important than the values of our homes. So if we make sure that our kids are learning, and if we improve the education of our kids, that means thriving schools to me equals thriving community. So once you create a thriving schools, automatically you create a thriving community. So let's make sure that we teach our kids, and let's make sure that our kids not only compete in sports, but compete in education in all fields, math, science, and also innovation. So they become tomorrow's leaders of innovation. We can have a high school to have the next app and become a celebrity in the United States. This is the land of opportunity. So let's make sure that we teach our kids. Then the value of homes would increase.
Matthew Fox.
I love these how will we do it questions. So a vote yes on the levy. We got 12 out of 12 here. So if anyone's thinking about something else, they shouldn't. Basically, there's three things I would say. The first one is better services that attract more people to stay in our schools and come to our districts. That could be languages earlier on. It could be more of the STEM classes. But improving our services will keep the schools strong, keep the home values high. The second thing is we don't work closely between the school board and city council. There are 100,000 people moving to Hennepin County in the next 12 years. I've met with all 5 members of city council and started to build that relationship. We need to be looking at how we're going to integrate our students and integrate our community over the next 10 years. Because we'll get 5 to 8% of those students, and right now we're not ready for that capacity. So to make sure our home values stay high, we're all on the same team in Edina, and we need to work more collaboratively. And the third one, thank you. Third one is public-private partnerships. I've done this. I will bring these into the schools. If you vote for me or not, I will still do this next year. So that's not a reason to vote for me. I'll do it. But we need to make sure that we have better public-private partnerships. Thank you.
David Goldstein.
First, I do agree that people move into our community because of our history of having and their belief that we're going to carry through on that commitment into the future while their children grow up. So supporting the levy, electing a competent professional board, continuing to support the school, key to housing values. In addition, the people who come into the school district many of them are very committed to public education, very concerned about their own children's education. And it's those folks who are committed and so devoted to our schools that create the resources that allow our district to do everything that it does. And that means providing appropriate services to our gifted and talented kids, to our special needs kids, to all of the folks who move into this district because they expect their kids' needs to be met. We need to do that well.
Heidi Hilliker.
I agree with the November 7th voting yes to the levy. One of the reasons, too, I think the biggest reason that I moved back to Edina was I knew the school district, and that's why I came back here. I think it's been one of the best school districts ever. I've lived in Colorado, Seattle, everywhere, and people, I say I'm from Edina, and they're like, oh, yeah, the Edina Cake Eaters. But I'm like, you know what? It's a great place to be, and I think we should continue doing what we're doing. I think that our school has a great reputation, but I think we should challenge ourselves for new ways in learning. I think our younger kids, our 5, 6, 7, 3-year-olds, they are going to have different ways of learning. They're 20 seconds and they're done. So we need to think of new ways to get better ourselves and get ahead of the game when it comes to the technology in our kids' education, because they're a lot faster and a lot smarter and they're quicker at things. So we can continue doing what we're doing, but let's look at new ways to do our learning. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to kind of look what's outside the box so we can take it to that next level.
Ellen Jones.
Okay, so what I think is that we need to keep an eye on our competitive edge when we are making decisions as a board. We can't look at program cuts without looking at the way that the community has what our competitors, the other districts that people are choosing or not choosing to go to, what are they doing? And we need to keep an eye on that. We should listen to our realtors and say, what is the image that we have, and find out, word on the street. Are we sticking to, do we do what we say we're going to do with an excellent program? But I would also like to make sure that we keep our program strong. Oh, vote yes on the levy, by the way. That's a must. But we have to keep our program strong by voting yes on the levy. I want to make sure that we have a process for reviewing our policies and our curriculum, especially the new ones. Thank you.
All right, Matt Laux.
Okay, so as an economics guy, it was a long time ago, but price is determined by supply and demand and where they cross. There are probably not going to be many new homes on blank lots that are going to be built here, so it's all about demand. Why do folks want to move here? the quality of the schools, which gets to what I've talked about, maintaining the academic rigor and creating an environment where all learners feel part of the community. On the academic side, there are a lot of pilots going on, but instead of providing narrative data, which some in our administration have, I want to see real numbers. Tell me how a student scored at the beginning and after 6 months. Okay, I don't want narrative data. They were interested in this type of book. They met this standard. That's what I want to see. I'm not an expert on talking about race, but we do need to do it, and you need to hear the viewpoints of folks who don't look like you, and you can do that while not putting politics into the class.
Thank you. Owen Michelson.
One of the first thing out-of-town buyers of homes in Edina look at are the test scores. And the most prominent test scores for out-of-town buyers are the state MTAs. And as I've talked about a few times, we have had a decline, a conspicuous and meaningful decline in high school test scores. That's not true of elementary, but the high school is true. And we need to be concerned with that. We need to also not take too much comfort in the fact that the ACTs indeed have been high, because ACTs are highly coachable. And parents spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to increase their students' test scores. And that reflects as much on the wealth of Edina as it does anything else. So the schools can't really claim a lot of the high test scores. Now, the other thing I want to propose is that we have to work together and be solutions-based. Join hands on coming up with new proposals to challenge our district. And my ideas are voice and choice for the parents.
Thank you. Lisa O'Brien.
It's hard when you're at the end. Okay, people move here. I moved here for the schools, and more importantly, I stayed here for the schools. So it is the board's job, the administration's job, to safeguard the excellence of education for every, and I mean each and every student that comes to our doors. We also need to be fiscally responsible. We are stewards of your money, so we need to be transparent and very clear about how we're spending it and why. Also, we need to listen to our community, our business people, our realtors as well, because they're going to give us the temperature of what they're hearing and whether people really are continuing to come here or are considering other options. So that is what, as a board, those are the three things we need to do. Thank you.
Okay, Chris Tischer.
So I'm an example of somebody moving to the community because of the educational opportunities. Our daughter was open enrolled initially, starting in kindergarten. As myself and my wife took different jobs, we had a decision to make of either moving to Edina or taking our kids out and putting them in a different school. And we made the decision based off of the excellence of Edina schools to move to Edina. As far as keeping home values up and ensuring the home values in comparison to the success of our schools, what I would say is this is an example of it. I mean, you've got 12 people that are committed to running for school board. All the people in the room today and that have participated in this forum and the other forum shows the engagement of our community and our commitment to the education of our students. And as school board members, we need to make sure that that voice is being heard, and by doing so, that will help with these home values.
Okay, thank you. A second randomly selected question from the audience, and we will start with Erica on this one. What concrete steps can be taken to address class size?
Oh, there we go. I think one concrete step that can be taken to address class size is looking at our open enrollment process. And I think right now we open enroll up to 2 students below the maximum allowable class size. And I think we should look at maybe dropping that to 3 students below the open or maximum allowable class size. The other thing that I mentioned in the last forum was, is there some way that we can have like a 2-step open enrollment process where we look at open enrolling a certain number of kids in February, where the open enrollment process is, see how many Edina residents enroll, and then if there is still space, allow more residents in or allow more open enrollment students in at that point. As far as dropping class sizes, we have to look, it's a budgetary issue. It's a complete budgetary issue. The levy,
All right. Chad
The
Bell.
levy will help that, right? Is that where you're going? Is that fair? Because I want to make sure I don't misrepresent you. Go ahead, you can have my time.
Actually, I
have
was
it.
going to say,
Go ahead.
the levy is not going to be a miracle pill.
Right.
That's going to get us lower.
Right.
Sorry.
No,
I wasn't
I'm,
gonna say that.
okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to lead a witness on that. Okay, so anyway, so Erica's right. The levy is obviously to keep the lights on, and she's correct. And there is some budgetary restrictions when it comes to class size. It is a hot topic, and a lot of folks are concerned about it, and I get it. My kids are little, and we go through that. I think we have to look at the processes that we use today, whether it is open enrollment or whether it's how we're allocating resources to schools, and where the population's coming in, where are people moving, where are we seeing an influx, and do we have the right resources applied to that? But fundamentally, sometimes these things are difficult to solve with the budgets that we have. It's not necessarily made to be excuse. It's just this is just a conversation we have to have. So we look at all the policies. We try to apply liberally to what we own or what we have, and we try to make sure we put the schools in the best position to be successful.
Faisal Dairy.
Class sizes are very important because critically, when you have a teacher with so many students, they might not get the right resources they need. But we need to understand that it's also critically to understand the limited resources from a physical perspective that we have. I've looked at and I in court and I support the yes vote because it's the survival of our schools. If we do not vote, it may even increase the class sizes we have today because this is a critical component in our budget. So I would say that one of the things that we can do to reduce class sizes is to look at the line items of all our expenses, especially the discretionary line items that we have. If we can, stop some of the wasteful spending, we may be able to reduce based on the budget we have and the limited resources we have without increasing our tax resource.
Matthew Fox.
Thank you. So there are three things here. The first one is for open enrollment, we need stage gates. It needs to be more than once. It needs to be more than twice. And I was proud to work with Erica and talk to the administration earlier this year to have a class size added to one of our schools in the elementary setting. Second one is I was walking with a teacher yesterday for half an hour during the hurricane relief walk at Concord. And we discussed the idea that if you have larger class sizes, you provide more teacher support from paras in the form of training, or you ask them what they need. So as a board member, if financials are tight, I would go and ask those teachers and ask those administrators, what do the teachers need if we're on the higher end of that max level? So let's find solutions that are reasonable. And the second one, third one is something creative. So I don't know how we would get this in 2018, but different places have different strengths. So if we were great at French like we are at Normandale, somebody else is great at tech where they are at Minnetonka, we could partner and cross-reference and have different shared resources. So we can do more partnerships even between districts as well as with different companies. Those are three solutions I'd provide on the spot. Thank you.
David Goldstein.
First, clearly there have been issues with classes that have, some classes that have been larger than we'd want them to be. However, it's not really clear at this point that that's a systemic problem. Population issues and bulges come and go, and the first thing to determine is what kind of a problem do we have before we start throwing expensive solutions at them. Assuming that there is a systemic issue with class size, the most immediate opportunity is going to be to try to do some fine-tuning with open enrollment, but that is a limited opportunity. After that, you get down to the same type of cost-benefit analysis you do on anything. What do you have to cut to make a class smaller, and is what you're giving up going to be more significant than what you're getting with a smaller class? And for the most part, I think we've been striking the balance as best we can. Thanks.
Heidi Hilliker.
Yeah, open enrollment, I agree. It needs to be a different process to that because we just need to get gates to it and levels to it to make sure we're measuring and getting the right amount of people that we're understanding coming into our district. I think our district's going to grow pretty big in the next probably 5 years. We've got all these new homes in the area where I live that all have young children. So we really need to think about asking our teachers, what do they need? I know we have large classroom sizes, and they're going to continue to get larger maybe, so we need to talk to them and get solutions from them of what works, if it's more paras, if it's partnering with other school districts, which is a great call. I think those are the opportunities where we learn what we can do to reduce those class sizes or support our teachers in those class sizes so that they can educate every student and they get the fair share of what they need.
Ellen Jones.
Okay, so I agree with everything that's been stated here about the need to review our budget. our need to look at open enrollment, create a two-step process for open enrollment. I believe that we need to pass the levy. I think that the other areas that I think we need to look at is we need to really talk with the city and work really well with the city, especially with the new development that's coming in. We need a process aligned with the city to make sure that as new development goes in, that the needs of the facilities are there to support the additional population. So that would be the thing to add. The other thing that I would also add is that I think that we need to be really strategic. There are some classes that need more teachers. English needs more teachers than other classes, and we need to be really targeted in our allocation of teaching staff. Thank you.
Okay, Matt Laux.
Okay, so I think class size is not the right number to look at. If I told you that you had 28 kids and they were in gym, you probably wouldn't be too mad about that. If I told you there were 28 kids and there were 28 adults in the class, you wouldn't be worried about that. We need to think about resource per child at the time that we really want them, either in reading groups or math groups. So I have 4 ideas that could help along those lines. Number 1, we could be smarter about how we use paras. If there's 2 classes that have 25 students, drop 1, raise 1, and we automatically get a para. Number 2, we have an incredible amount of volunteers in the community who could definitely come in and run one. I'm doing my job, trying to work with University of Minnesota, Augsburg, folks who want a student teach, bring them into the classroom now, and we get a first look to see, as folks retire, should we hire them? Lastly, we could do what Normandale does, bring interns in, start a world language at some of these schools. They teach Spanish for 1 hour, and then they're in those small groups during the...
I think this operates on 3 levels. One, first is the levy has to be passed, because if that doesn't pass, we've got huge problems with class sizes. The second thing is I like Erica's idea of adjusting the enrollment threshold. Third, I think that this operates on a financial level. And I'd like to see a rigorous audit of the finances to see if we can actually free up money. I'm really concerned again, as I've said, why do we have $2 million in outside consulting fees? That could do something to adjust class sizes right there. Third is I think we ought to look at the revenue model that we have coming from the state. I don't have a position on it, but I'd like to look at it. What's TIF funding? Do we want to continue on in that relationship, tax incremented funding? And one of the benefits of coming toward the end is you can say you like somebody else's idea, and Matt had a great idea with creative partnerships with the University of Augsburg.
All right, Lisa O'Brien.
Okay, so, yeah, coming towards the end. Levy, yes. I want to say also that class sizes have different meanings if you're a kindergartner versus an 11th grader. So just to do broad class sizes that we need to fix it all, we need to look at where are the needs, how do we allocate those resources to meet those needs, and also use data. Are kids actually growing academically? Are they growing socially? Not necessarily if a class size is 28, maybe all those kids are actually growing because there's enough resources allocated for that classroom. So it's really looking at an individual case-by-case basis. And then as a board, we do the policy of the guidelines. So are those guidelines appropriate? Do they need to be adapted based on the changing needs of our district? And so it's sort of a partnership between all of those people to create the right blend or recipe in every classroom.
Okay, Chris Tischer.
Again, coming towards the end, as everybody has said, it's both a blessing and a curse. I would concur, especially with Matt, as far as some of the items that he raised. It's not necessarily the class sizes themselves; it's the ratio of students to adults that are able to assist. There are a number of studies out there where larger class sizes, as long as you're maintaining the right level of resourcing to have additional support staff, both from a technology standpoint and from a human capacity standpoint, that students are actually performing better than instances where you're having smaller class sizes, because you're getting those students in front of the best teachers, but you're still making sure that you have the appropriate level of resources to support those teachers as well.
Okay, Gabe Adderhold.
Lawn signs, this is my #1 issue. So the ways that I would tackle the growing class size issue is first is we need to cap open enrollment. We need to look at the process there because we continue to overfill our classrooms. And our district does have guidelines, but when we exceed those guidelines, it's just oops right now. There aren't any consequences in place. The second is budget reallocation. I really do think that we need to shift more of our expenditures and consulting services into teaching and learning. We need to, which the superintendent is doing, examine collaboration spaces. I've heard teachers talk about how these collaboration spaces may be impacting class sizes with fewer traditional classroom spaces. We need an advocate at the legislature. Minnesota is one of the only states that doesn't have class size guidelines. California recently passed legislation to help K through third grade reduce class sizes. It's a bipartisan push. And fifth, we need to work with the city, looking at those new developments and making sure facilities make up for the new growth.
So this is the point at which the outbursts of clapping is appropriate. We've come to the end of the forum, and I want to thank each one of the candidates for their willingness to volunteer and serve in our community with our kids and our schools. We have amazing choices. I appreciate everyone in attendance, those who stood for 2 hours or sat on the hard floor. That is a testament to the profound commitment our community has to our children and to our schools, and we can be proud of that. The recording of today's forum will be available online soon at www.edinaschools.org/board election. And finally, please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 7th. Thank you all.
It would have been like, Ellen, you were great. That was much better than last time. But it would have been much better.